You ever finish a ghost story and instead of just feeling creeped out, you feel, I don't know, kind of satisfied? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain and dissect the anatomy of modern digital horror. We're going to figure out why some of the scariest stories out there are also about perfect, brutal justice. Let's get right into it.
So what's the actual recipe for a perfect revenge ghost story? You might think it's just a bunch of jump scares and creepy sounds, but nope. There's often a very specific and really powerful formula at play, and we're about to uncover that formula by looking at two Hindi horror stories that have absolutely blown up online.
Okay, so think of these two stories as our case studies. On one hand, you've got a story about these dark, twisted secrets hidden inside a postmortem house, and on the other, a tale of scientific betrayal that plays out on a global stage. Yeah, they're both terrifying on their own, but when you put them together, they reveal the blueprint for modern supernatural horror. Now, just to be super clear here, we are not just going to retell some scary stories to give you the spooks. No, we're going to get under the hood. We're going to break down the mechanics of these stories and figure out why they work so well, why they tap into our deepest fears, and maybe even more surprising, our sense of right and wrong.
You know, every great horror story, it needs an entry point we can all relate to. It always starts with ordinary people, right? People just like us, who suddenly get dragged into these insane circumstances in places that just ooze with dread.
So who are our heroes? Well, first, we've got Amit. He's a young guy who takes his late father's job as a night watchman, basically to figure out how his dad really died. Then we have scientist Vikram, a total genius who is this close to saving the entire world. See? They both start from a really human place. One is searching for truth, the other is trying to save humanity.
And check out their worlds. A post-mortem house? I mean, that's classic horror, right? It's a place literally built for death and secrets. But a press conference? That's supposed to be a stage for success. This contrast is so cool because it shows us that modern horror, it's not just hiding in the shadows anymore. It can strike right out in the open, under the brightest spotlights.
Okay, but this is where it gets really interesting. Because yeah, these stories have ghosts, but the supernatural, that's not the real source of the evil here. The true horror, the thing that kicks this whole mess off, is something way more real and honestly, way more terrifying: human betrayal.
And that brings us to the most important question we have to ask. We've got ghosts, for sure, but who is the real monster in these stories? Well, the answer in both of them is, shockingly, human.
I mean, just look at this stuff. It's totally depraved. In the first story, you've got doctors, and a mystic who are desecrating bodies. And get this, Amit's own father was in on it. Then, in the second story, a scientist murders his own partner for money and fame. The horror isn't a monster. It's pure, uncut human greed and immorality.
You don't even have to take my word for it. The ghost of one of the wronged women from the post-mortem house, she says it perfectly. She doesn't call them criminals. She calls them demons, completely stripping away their humanity because their actions were so inhuman.
And boom, right after, you get this from Vikram's ghost, a crystal-clear accusation. He exposes his partner not as some rival, but as a murderer and a fraud. In both stories, the very first thing the ghost does is speak a truth that the living world tried to bury forever.
So you see what's going on here, right? This is so crucial. The ghost isn't the source of evil. The ghost is a consequence of it. The paranormal activity is just a reaction. It's like the universe's immune system kicking in to fight off an infection of pure human corruption.
And that, my friends, leads us to what is, let's be honest, the most satisfying part of this whole formula. It's that moment when all the normal ways of getting justice have failed, and these stories bring in a higher and way more terrifying authority to balance the scales.
We could actually give this a name: supernatural justice. It's this amazing storytelling trick where the ghost becomes an agent of pure vengeance, making sure that no evil deed goes unpunished, even if it means crossing the line between life and death to get the job done.
In this supernatural justice, it follows a pretty clear three-step plan. First, the haunting. The ghost shows up, lets the bad guys know they're not safe. Second, the revelation. The ghost blows the whole conspiracy wide open for the world to see. And finally, number 3, the retribution. This is when the ghost delivers the punishment, personally.
And let's be real clear about this isn't subtle justice. There are no courts, there are no appeals. The payback delivered by these spirits is designed to be a show. It is fast, it is very, very public, and it is absolutely brutal.
And the punishment always fits the crime, doesn't it? In the first story, the doctors are killed in the exact room where they committed their horrible acts. In the second story, the murderous scientist is killed on live television, at the very second he's trying to claim his stolen glory. It's justice delivered for the whole world to see.
So all of this brings us to the big why. Why do we find these stories about vengeful ghosts so compelling? Why do we find ourselves rooting for the ghost?
Well, the answer is pretty simple. It's because these stories feed a fundamental human need to see the world put right. When we look around and see greed and corruption and evil seemingly getting away with it, these stories give us a fantasy where the scales are always balanced in the end.
Just look at how it all ends. In both cases, the ghost's intervention gives us complete and total closure. The bad guys are punished, the truth is out, and in Vikram's case, his name is cleared and his work is used for good. It's a brutal, yeah, but it's a complete restoration of moral order.
And that leaves us with one last thing to chew on: the perfect revenge ghost story. It's not just about being scared, it's about our deep hunger for justice. So, if our most popular scary stories are really about a kind of justice we feel we can't get in the real world, what does that say about the world we're actually living in? Kind of makes you think, doesn't it?